What is up guys, Dzeeff here, and today I have a new type of video that I want to try out. So in the background you guys will see the second box opening from the Phantom Rage premiere event, but I didn't record any audio for it, and the reason is that I want to actually do a discussion about Phantom Rage while the pack opening just plays in the background. I hope that this does make you guys more interested in watching today's video instead of just another pack opening video. And I think in hindsight I should not have bought a second box of Phantom Rage. And I know I haven't mentioned it recently, but if you guys are buying any Yu-Gi-Oh cards from Phantom Rage, or really anything, I mean November is huge. We have Phantom Rage and Maximum Gold and the Charmer structure deck. Please use my link in the description below to tcgplayer.com. It helps out the channel quite a lot. I have not mentioned it in a little while here, but I do want to mention it because November is a big month for Yu-Gi-Oh! That being said, in today's video, what I wanted to try out is talking about how I feel Phantom Rage will change Yu-Gi-Oh! I want to talk about the big new archetypes, the big legacy support cards, and some of the new, like I guess they called them free agent cards that I talked about in my Konami sponsored video from a couple weeks ago. I'm doing this so that it's all in one place because some of these cards I've talked about before or gave first impressions about, but some of them I've really never talked about on the channel. So this is like one video where you can get my thoughts about Phantom Rage. If you guys enjoyed today's video or have any comments about the formula of today's video, please let me know because I would love to hear all of your feedback. I'm not really sure where I should put the cards on the screen so that they don't take away from the pack opening, but I'm really just open to your guys' suggestions because I do want to try this style in the future. Anyway, one of the biggest new archetypes out of this set that's brand new is the Virtual World archetype. I think this deck is a lot better than people are giving it credit for. Now I know there has been some discussion about this deck, especially after it performed quite well in a bigger OCG tournament with I think around 900 players, but even with that, people just are not giving the deck enough thought, and I don't think that's right because I do think it actually is fairly good. You have a really good boss monster, the level 9 Synchro monster that is like a macro Cosmos, but only for the field, so not from hand or deck, but still pretty good. And the deck does have many starter cards, which is always welcome in a new archetype, and overall I'm pretty happy with how this deck runs on a turn-to-turn basis. One of the biggest differences between this deck and the OCG versus the TCG is going to be that we don't have Max C, and that certainly is a downside. I mean, that's going to always change any OCG results compared to the TCG results. Max C at 3 copies per deck is a pretty big deal. Even without Max C though, I still think this deck has a lot of potential, and I can't wait to see more people try it out at online tournaments like remote duels or unofficial events. Tri-Brigades are also one of the new themes from Phantom Rage, and I think they have a lot of hype, maybe even more than Virtual World. I'm not sure exactly how successful this deck will be. If anything, it's more of a splashable engine into already existing decks. Anything that is playing Beast monsters or Beast Warrior monsters or Winged Beast monsters will want to give these cards a try, and if you are playing a deck with those cards, these things are pretty darn helpful. They're not going to break the entire game, they're not going to make decks with those 3 types instantly tier 1, but if a deck that had those types was kind of struggling but did have some decent plays, the Tri-Brigades might be enough to push them over the edge. Now, does that mean there will be a rogue deck once they include these new cards, or maybe a tier 1 deck? That part I'm not entirely sure about, and there are some meme decks that are playing these cards. I've seen some Melfi decks and some Ojama decks that use Tri-Brigades because those are beast type decks. I will say here, from a design standpoint, it's pretty cool to see type support once again. You know, way back in the day, that was all Yu-Gi-Oh was. We didn't have archetypes, we had types and attributes, and a lot of the time that was how you built your decks. Nowadays, nowadays though, outside of like chaos decks, and even then those decks usually do have archetypes, we really don't see types and attributes getting used that much. It's mostly just themes, and that decides what you're going to play. With these cards though, it does encourage you to play Beast, Beast Warrior, or Winged Beast decks, and I think that is pretty cool, and I would like to see more cards like this in the future. Next up, we have the new World Premiere archetype in the TCG version of Phantom Rage, and that is Mutants. This archetype is brand new. We've never seen it before. I got 14 new cards, which is a lot. I mean, that's almost all of the World Premiere cards in the set going to the Mutant archetype. When I gave my first impressions of these cards, I said they were very powerful, and I still think in some way that the starters and ending cards are very good. When I tried to play this deck though, and I think a lot of people found this as well, the middle area is kind of where the deck falls short. You oftentimes don't have enough cards to make your big fusions on turn 1 reliably, or at least in a way that doesn't lose you a lot of card advantage, so you just end on the regular level 8 mutants, and oftentimes those are not competitively viable enough to carry you into the late game. I still think this deck has a lot of potential. The starters actually are a lot better than I think people give them credit for. Yes, they are -1s, and yes, they lose pretty hard to hand traps, but there are some pretty cool plays that you can do, and the payoff is pretty big if you can get to those fusion monsters and actually summon them reliably on turn 1. That being said, right now, I really doubt that mutants will be played, but maybe people will try out better versions of the deck than what I was able to come up with. I can't wait to see this deck in the future. Moving on to the legacy support, there is a lot of legacy support in Phantom Rage. I think the one that everyone is talking about though, and that I'll mention as well, is the Phantom Knight support, which does make sense, right? Because the set is called Phantom Rage, and these new cards are very, very good. Now, I know a lot of you have not been following me for that long, but way back in the day, I actually did play Phantom Knights quite a lot. I got a ARG top, a Circuit Series top, with like Phantom Knight zombies back in 2016, and I do love this archetype quite a bit. Obviously, when Rusty was released, everyone thought, okay, Phantom Knights are back in competition, and they were kind of right, because some Phantom Knights did end up getting played, but the pure Phantom Knight deck really wasn't a thing. With the new Phantom Knight cards, I'm sure we'll still see them splashed with other decks, maybe even Burning Abyss with now 3 copies of Tour Guide, but I think we will actually see fairly large Phantom Knight engines instead of just like 1 or 2 cards. Even if by some chance here the Phantom Knight deck with all this new support completely flops at a competitive level, which is always possible, I will say look out for this deck around the next ban list. Maybe it'll just take hitting some of the bigger combo decks for this deck to be competitively viable once again. Still, I know a lot of people are excited for these new cards, myself included, and I do really think here that Phantom Knights will make some impact on the metagame. Next up, we have Prank Kid's Meow Meow Mew, one of the biggest legacy support cards in the entire set. Maybe this card isn't as good for what it does, but rather for what it is. This is a Link 1 Prank Kids monster, which we have not seen before, and that is very important because it instantly triggers any of your Prank Kid monster effects to start all of your big combos. That is a pretty big difference because in the past, Prank Kids sort of struggled with 1-card combos. Oftentimes, the best Prank Kid openings had to use 2 Prank Kid monsters and a Polymerization or Invocation. But with a Link 1 monster, it makes it a lot easier to summon your bigger monsters and sort of do all of those crazy combos that Prank Kids are capable of if they actually do draw their good starters. With this new Link 1 monster, Prank Kids got a lot more competitively viable and a lot more consistent. Next up, we have those free agent cards that I made an entire video about for Konami a couple weeks ago, and these are cards that are not part of any archetype, and in some cases here, in 2 of these cases, these are some of the most hyped cards out of the entire set. First up, we have Divine Arsenal AA Zeus Sky Thunder, and this is probably the card that has the most amount of people talking. This really does boost pretty much any deck that's playing Xyz monsters in any capacity. That includes Burning Abyss and Phantom Knights, of course, but also decks like Zodiac or Frogs, or really anything playing any amount of Xyz monsters. I know this card has already been performing quite well in the OCG, and I would expect a similar result in the TCG format. Next up, we have Alpha, the big new beast monster, also known as Zoo King Alpha out of the OCG translation, but this card is basically Pankratops 2.0, and Pankratops obviously was a very good card for a long time, and even is still seeing play at 1 copy per deck. This card, though, does have a lot of benefits over Pankratops, and even though it's not perfect in every single way, Pankratops is better in some situations. I think it's good enough that people will really give this card a chance. I think it's even pretty likely that people will find 4 side deck spots for 3 Alpha and 1 Pankratops if they really want these big going second monster cards that break boards but also can attack for damage. I'm not sure if we'll see that right now immediately, but I think it will happen in the future at some point. Alpha is a very good card, one of the bigger secret rares in the set, and I think a lot of people are going to look to pick up their playset pretty early. Lastly, I will briefly mention Warning Point. I've talked about this card in many videos. I do think it is very, very good in decks like Altergeist or Frogs or maybe even other controlling decks, but those are the main 2 that I'm thinking of, and obviously it's because I've played those decks quite a lot. Frog Paleozoics I think are actually very, very good with Phantom Rage. I'm going to be posting an article on tcgplayer.com in the coming days here about Frog Paleozoics. I think they're really good with AA Zeus and Warning Point. I think that'll make a pretty big difference. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Let me know in the comment section below if you have any feedback for this new style. I would love to change it and update it as we go into future sets, because I think it could be something a lot cooler than just a normal pack opening. I'll see you guys later though. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.